All right, we're live. We're going to talk about freight, trucking, whatever, right? Whatever you want to talk about. Stay tuned right after this annoying intro video. Enter now. Go. Good morning. Check 1, 2. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It is April 23rd, right? Is that right? April 23rd? Man, this week's flying. Well, I don't know if this week's flying by. Last week, it soared like an eagle. Like an eagle, right? Last week was very tough. Last week was very stressful. But we got it done. We got her done. Last time I talked to you was Friday, and we checked load volumes on all the load boards, and it was looking pretty unhealthy. But you know what? Volumes have returned a little bit, so a lot of that was related to Good Friday. So if you plan on being in the spot market next year, write that down, that there's a big slowdown right before Easter. That was one of the things I used to do. Is I used to have a calendar, like one of them planner things, and I would write down basically a journal of loads I was doing, what I was seeing. And so when freight slowed down, it wasn't a big surprise. I could kind of project my own numbers. I can kind of project what I was going to look at. Now, a lot of people argue that COVID was a black swan event that no one could plan for, but what it did is it artificially influenced a down cycle, and it artificially influenced an up cycle. In other words, the cycle was still there, but it was just more extreme. And it seems to be kind of the case. And so the whole purpose of a lot of the technology that they use for booking and managing freight is to make sure that we don't have any more spikes. So consistency is king. They realize that, but with the tariffs and the economy, that's becoming an event in and of itself. So, but we'll look at freight. I did notice some increased rates yesterday. I was part-time. I was on Sterling's 4-hour live feed yesterday, and we were discussing freight a little bit. He's putting his numbers out there, so and one of the things that that I talked to him about on that live feed, and then I've told people in private in phone conversation, is that you have to be efficient. The truck's got to work, and you got to be good with your clock. That was one of the things that caused a spike in the spot market back in 2017 when they mandated ELDs. A lot of loads became team loads all of a sudden, and it took a minute for all the shippers and receivers to kind of schedule things out, so it was DOT legal. And and a lot of people don't realize that's the history of logbooks. The Teamsters were like, we don't want to work 24/7. It was nothing back in the day that you had a load that picked up in LA and needed to be in New York City in 3 days. I mean, that was common occurrence back in the logbook days, the paper logs. And so, and a lot of people abuse that system as well, which is why they had to come up with the hours of service. It was designed to make us work less or work not as hard, and if you think about when you hear stories of companies putting 3 people in trucks and that truck runs constantly, they're overworking a lot of drivers. And here's the thing: if you're overworked, you're going to make horrible decisions. Your health is going to go to crap. And that was another topic of discussion yesterday in Sterling's about health. How hard it is to be healthy on the road, and there's a lot of things stacked against us out there on the roads. And so my job, I think, well, not my job, but my purpose is to, kind of explain a few things and maybe make things a little bit easier. And I do know that taking notes and paying attention to what's going on right now will help you in the future. So, but other than that, hold on. Coughing up a lung here with allergies are hitting us pretty hard at the house this week. So I think my wife's been sneezing nonstop, and ever since I mowed the grass, it's been an issue, right? So anyways, hope all is well. I got my little tribal dragon coffee cup. I'm going to turn this into a tattoo and be edgy, right? Oh wait, I already did that. Never mind. So sorry. But anyways, we'll talk about freight. We got this, and we'll go over an email that I get sent about capacity trends and tender rejections and all that. I'm not going to throw a bunch of charts at you, because at the end of the day, if you got to move, you got to move, and you look at what's in front of you, and hopefully you're working with good people, working with a good company, working with good brokers, or you're working with a good customer and you're good to go. So, let's go over that. We'll go over the comments first, and then we'll read our stuff, and then we'll go over some low volumes, see what's going on around the country. Weather-wise, not much going on. Pretty quiet. So for a change, spring is here. The spring thunderstorms have happened over the weekend. Oh, last weekend we had like some, man, you wake up and there's like branches all over the yard and stuff like that. We had some major winds, some tornadoes in Missouri. I think it was Saturday or Sunday. But anyways, Gary Cook, I'm going to go to this comment first. Gary Cook says cat scales went up again. First wave, 1475 as of last Friday. Man, it's going to get to the point that no one wants to scale their loads out, right? Now, there's some people that project that when we get on the other side of this tariff business, that freight we're going to see another spike in rates like we did post-COVID. And here's my fear with some of that. Look how much more expensive everything got when that happened. We saw truck labor shoot through the roof. We saw the price of trucks shoot through the roof. Trailers that were once 30 grand became 50 grand. and labor hours that were once 180 became 250 to 300 per hour. So I mean, a turbo repair jumped up by 2 or 3 or 4 grand. And tolls went up. Everything else went up. So that's kind of my fear. And everybody wants their piece of the pie. Everyone's like, oh, parking's now $25 a spot. And Catskills are almost $15. What are reways, Gary? So it pays for itself to get, if you have the same trailer, if you own your trailer, it pays to have one of those onboard scales. Trust me, it pays for itself within the first year. Anyways, let's go to the rest of the comments here, and then we'll go over some emails. My name is Nobody. Good morning. Chief Ray Holler, good morning. Tell us some good news. The good news is you're alive, you're well, you're doing well, and you're breathing, right? And there's some good things happening. I truly believe that. So Jerome Jones, good morning. Gary Cook, good morning. TK, hey now. Bull of the Woods, what's up? Scott, hi y'all. I'm on my way to Oshalata, Oklahoma. Trying to remember where that is. Yeah, I think I know. That's off of 40, right? 40 and 69, right? Turned 60 2 weeks ago. Don't know how to act, but get off my grass. Yeah. Well, congratulations for hitting the big 6-0. I am not far behind you. It felt weird when I, here's what you do, right? I think for every monumental age number, I'm going to buy something really nice for myself. So my 50th birthday was, well, I can't talk about it here. 3 stops today: Lennar, Boone, and Hickory, North Carolina. Good deal. Yeah, Scott, happy birthday. SST with the thumbs up horns and the eyes. Good morning, sir. Shannon, good morning from Boston. Right? Oh, is that a new screen behind me? Kinda. Wife bought it, I think, for $40 off of eBay. It's a divider to kind of give the people behind me privacy, because this time of morning, both the young adult kids are getting ready for classes, and kind of hides some of the clutter behind me. Although Godzilla still shows up, right? And so. Sterling says Church Wheel was 7 hours yesterday. Good morning, kids. Many thanks to everyone who showed up. Yeah, and Buck Brown revealed that his truck was paid off, so that was cool. Reways are $5.25. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I agree with that. SST cat scale up again. Those right way scales are looking more of a necessity instead of a luxury. I agree with that. Like I said, I remember when Like Trucking first started, Jeff had gotten one, and then Gear Grabber had gotten one. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do the same thing. And of course, Prime uses them on all their trailers. And so at the Dallas Truck Show, I bought the trailer one. And then I believe I don't know if it was the next Dallas Truck Show or at Matt's, I bought the one for the tractor. I did have an air suspension gauge, but it was kind of hard to be accurate with that. So I went ahead, and it cost me like $300 to install, because they had to drill part of the console and the whole 9 yards. But that was awesome. And so I went from scaling, I don't know, 5 times a month to like maybe once every 5 months. And and here's how it works. So like on your standard paper loads and your Coke and Pepsi loads and your water loads, if it's 42.3, 43.4, that kind of thing, it was pretty easy to kind of gauge it and check the scale and like, yeah, we're good, right? Now, if it was tough for me to balance the scales on both the gauges, I'd be like, I should probably scale this one out. And then I would actually use those moments to calibrate the scales. So you pick a cat scale that's not very busy, and you have your little device there, little screwdriver tip, and you sit on the scale, you check your app to see what your weights are, and then you can adjust it in the cab, and then you can get out real quick if no one's behind you and adjust the trailer real quick. And then you were good to go. And that's what I did. And I've got 2 videos on this channel, one for the trailer, one for the tractor. So just put Snorelord right way, and they should pop up. But I definitely think that they're worth the investment. They're not that expensive. I know that I got a discounted price at the truck shows. The more expensive part was getting them installed, because on the trailer one I had to have part of it welded. So, but T-Bone, good morning. Sterling, we all need to remember that trucking is a competitive business. If you're not prepared to run your competition out of business, you're the one being run out of business. That's true. Right? The X-Guard, Bull Guard is awesome. Hit a deer at 70 mile per hour, saved my butt. All right. Good deal, man. Yeah, I'm a full... I've seen those deer guards work. I think they're worth the... You lose a little bit of fuel mileage. Unless you got a non-aerodynamic truck, then it doesn't matter that much. But the little loss of aerodynamics is worth it because of the lack of, it could save you on a lot of downtime and a lot of internal damage. Josh Sabigan, what's up? Quick hit, good morning. Still trucking, good deal. I love my onboard scales when doing step deck. I think it was right way. Yeah, that's the one I had. I'm not a fan of those 44 500 water loads. Yeah, especially in the truck that you got, it could be a bit over, right? I don't always slide my axles, but when I do, I'm parked on the scales. I've got one of the weigh gizmos on my tractor, but only for the drive axles. There you go. There's the link to one of the videos. I get scales reimbursed. Well, that's good. Yeah, if you get scales reimbursed, man, and most of the time, if you're getting scales reimbursed, you're probably not. I mean, a lot of people aren't pulling the same trailer. That's one of the advantages of owning a trailer is I know what I'm getting every morning, right? When I was at Schneider, you never know what the luck of the draw was, right? And trying to do drop and hook on at Landstar was even more it was more challenging, I would say. I would always drop and hook on the shipper side, but not on the receiver side, because if I could help it, because you never know when they wouldn't have an empty, and then it could take you a week to get another empty. Whereas Schneider, they might send you 100 miles to go get one, and they pay you a little bit for it. But yeah, once I bought my trailer, I was like, that's nice. And the maintenance on trailers is pretty low. So, brakes and tires, that's pretty much it. Is that the other one? Another right way. Thank you. Thank you there, Sterling. All right. Let us let's share the screen here. Market conditions allow. All right. National spot rate reported by DAT decreased to $1.57 with national fuel surcharge at 39 cents for a combined rate of $1.96 a mile. The national van spot rate is $1.97. The national flatbed rate is $2.60 a mile. So you flatbedders are doing pretty good. National reefer spot rate is $2.27 a mile. The national contract rate reported by DAT decreased to $2.02 a mile without fuel. So that's the thing. There's a constant tug of war. Should you do contract freight? Should you do spot freight? In my opinion, there's a combined thing that works, in my opinion, right? Because when spot rates become very low, then they start renegotiating contracts. So let's say you're a company of 50 trucks and you've got two main contracts and those rates lower. Now the rate is unsustainable. Well, guess what? Someone else gets that contract. And I see, we've had drivers leave here for dedicated contracts only to either come back or have to go somewhere else because those dedicated contracts dry up or they get renegotiated. And I dealt with that myself. I was with a company here in Missouri, and we had Bass Pro for a long time. And then we had heard rumors that Johnny Morris was seeking out some cheaper labor, and Werner ended up getting all the contracts, and we were booted out of the game. And the customers, the people at Bass Pro weren't happy about it because we had given them excellent service. And all of a sudden it was gone. And, so you have to take that in consideration. Wilson has a lot of the craft accounts here in the dry van part. And you know what? They've lost a lot of that. And now the big parking spot off I-44 is filled with about 50 Wilson dry van trailers that they invested in to keep that craft account. And now there's some shifting going on. DHL's now doing the day cab work for that. So, I mean, contracts get renegotiated all the time, and the spot market rates are utilized for leverage. So when the spot market is really high, a company like Schneider or Werner or Swift will come in and say, hey, we can drop 20 trailers and do this for 40% less than what you're paying the spot market people to do it, or paying C.H. Robinson to do it, right? And so they take advantage of those high spiked rates. But at the same time, if the customers know that, like spot rates right now are $1.57 plus fuel surcharge and fuel's cheaper now, wow, I can get it moved on the spot market cheaper than I've been paying, Schneider to do it. And so it's a constant tug of war. It's a constant game of give and take. And that's how that, look, a lot of freight is moved on the golf courses, at business dinner meetings, at luncheons, with business cards. That's how a lot of freight is moved. And so the idea is if you're not a good negotiator yourself, partner with a company that is a good negotiator, depending on what your goals and needs are, right? And so just like if you're going to be 100% spot market, well, if you're a good negotiator and you can create good relationships with brokers that have good relationships with their customers, then you could do pretty well. You could be pretty consistent. And consistency on a roller coaster is a pretty good luxury. That's kind of how that's how I view freight. That's just my views. I mean, it's my opinions, okay? My opinions. You could disagree with me all you want. That's fine. I'm always open to suggestion on what I'm wrong on, because I can take constructive criticism. Right? So outbound tender rejects, OTRI, which measures relative capacity in the market, increased to 5.5%. For reference, anything above 6 is showing capacity as tightening. The van outbound tender rejects decreased to 5.15%. The flatbed outbound tender reject decreased to 24%. This increase is directly related to the tariff uncertainty. So those of you looking at flatbed rates, don't go out and buy your flatbed just yet, because that could come crashing down, right? Decreased. I don't know how much it decreased to. I mean, that's how much it decreased to, but I don't know how much it decreased by. Reefer outbounds at 9.6%. Tender rejections are an indicator of trucking capacity conditions. Declining numbers indicate carriers are losing pricing power, while increasing numbers indicate carriers are gaining pricing power. And that's the name of the game, right? That's the name of the game. Josh says maintenance is real low if you do the work yourself. I agree with that. But we have a lot of look. Here's the thing: there's a lot of drivers that won't even change their own light bulbs, and when as a company owner, if you got company drivers and you hear them go, "I'm not a mechanic. I'm not fixing that light bulb," then that's going to be a costlier driver, because if they're not willing to change the light bulb themselves, then what else are they not willing to do? If you have the space and the time and the ability to do work yourself, that is a huge plus. I mean, DIY semi, I mean, he's proven that, right? So, that's something so I wholeheartedly believe that. Now, the manufacturers make it harder and harder to do that, especially with these specialty engines like the A26 or the Volvo or the Mac or the PACCAR, right? But so it's just it's a constant tug of war. That's what this industry is. Catskill maybe gets one transaction from me or Chief Freight Hauler. Good deal. Give me a second, people. Pam, what's up? Hope you're doing well out in the desert. Good morning, Michael. Mr. Charles, morning, Snorelord in chat. Hopefully everyone's doing well and staying strong. We're trying. They're going to need to print more money, right? Davis Express are closing their doors after 46 years of business. Yeah, and we're going to hear a lot of stories like that. And it's important to dive. Look, if you a lot of websites are going to use that as doom and gloom. A lot of YouTube channels are going to use it as doom and gloom to show how bad the trucking industry is right now, or how bad things are in trucking in the industry. But here's the thing: when you look at Davis, what caused it? Was it a big contract that was canceled? Was it the business was turned over to the kids and they kind of drove it in the ground because they didn't understand? Did it become public and stockholders started going more for profitable things than what the company actually needed? We see that happen. We saw that happen with Landstar and Schneider. So I mean, it's it's important to know why these businesses go out. I mean, you can sit there and look at, like, we were talking yesterday about Roadway and how it was a combined costs and the inability to adapt to current new conditions, right? And that's usually what takes people out, is cost and the inability to adapt. So if you constantly run one lane and that lane dries up, you need to be able to adapt to a different lane, right? If you're technology challenged, technologically challenged, there we go, that's hard words for a morning, you might want to work on that. You might want to work on improving that, because if you have your own authority and 90% of your business is done on that phone or computer, well, 100% pretty much. And so what took Davis out? We can easily go, oh, it's the conditions. Well, what part of the conditions were they able to go through? And maybe some just don't want to fight anymore. 46 years is a good run. It's going to hurt that town. Yeah, that'll be sad. It's difficult to operate a carrier in Florida regardless of size. That's true. Davis may be going out, but look at how honorable they were doing it compared to other companies in the past. And that shows you the true. I mean, look at when we all remember the Aero chaos, right? When Aero trucks went out. And then later on, we hear about the horrible things that they were doing in the office. I'm glad to see Davis is doing it honorably. Then Celadon, yeah, we all remember that. I don't see many XPO trucks like I used to. I wonder if they're struggling. Well, you're right there. There's XPO yard right there in Indy. I imagine they've downsized quite a bit. I mean, that's they separated from the broker platform. Now you got RXO and got all that. So, the outbound tender reject average is showing an 8.4 year-over-year decline in all modes, with the dry van segment reflecting a 10.9% decline year-over-year. JB Hunt reported an 8% decrease in truckload gross revenue per load in quarter one of 25 for the truckload segment. Its integrated capacity solutions segment brokerage division reported a 6% drop in revenue while also reporting 13% fewer loads. Martin reported a 10.6% drop in revenue from quarter 124, with net income falling 55% from $9.6 million to $4.3 million. So Martin's got the contract there at Walmart in Clarksville, right? If I was those dedicated drivers, I'd be a little bit worried about that. Mack Trucks, part of the Volvo Group, will lay off up to 450 workers across its Pennsylvania and Maryland plants, citing market uncertainty and tariffs. Hyundai and POSCO signed a memorandum of understanding to build a U.S.-based steel plant. That comes after Hyundai announced plans to invest $21 billion in the United States last month. That's going to take time, right? DHL Express is halting B2C shipments to the U.S. over $800 starting Monday due to delays from the new U.S. trade regulations. The rules, which lower the threshold for formal customs processing from $2,500 to $800, now require additional paperwork. DHL says it's suspending shipments until further notice. Interesting. Lawmakers in Nevada are considering doubling the minimum liability insurance requirement for intra-state motor carriers over the next 5 years, increasing to $1.5 million by January 1st, 2030. So if you have your own authority running intra-state in Nevada, that could be a problem. It's going to be a higher cost. A case concerning broker liability is now before the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit after a fatal crash in 2019. The case, Cox versus TQL, could potentially clarify whether brokers are liable for accidents involving carriers they hire. That's interesting. I know that Sage was talking about that for quite a bit last year. Retail sales rose 1.4% in March, following a 0.2% increase in February, marking the largest gain since January of 23. This rise was mainly fueled by spending spree on big ticket items, particularly cars. That's interesting. So basically, a summary is the freight market is in a tense holding pattern poised for big movements in either direction, depending on trade developments over the next quarter. Now, that's what I'm talking about, right? They're not going to give you an answer whether it's going to be better or worse, right? In this one report, we've showed, oh, this is getting worse, this is getting worse, but then, oh, but this has gotten better, and this has gotten better. So at the end of the day, none of this matters in the sense that you just got to run a tight ship, be on your A game at all times, whether it's a good market or a bad market. And when the market's really good and we're all making $1,000 a day and $3 a mile on short mile or long miles, it's easy to get sloppy. Think of a person from poverty that gets the lottery, wins the lottery. What do they do with that money? They're very sloppy with it, right? So that's something to kind of consider. You have to just look at what's in front of your hood and how do you compensate for the roller coaster that you're in, which is trucking, not just the spot market, but it's trucking, right? Escalating U.S.-China tariffs have slashed ocean bookings by 7.9% in 2 weeks, with a 60% drop from recent highs, signaling a looming import decline. This threatens drayage and rail intermodal volumes, particularly at West Coast ports, while dry van tender volumes down 10% year over year reflect economic sensitivity. Ocean spot rates from China to U.S. coast have hit post-Red Sea attack lows, and intermodal has gained market share as shippers prioritize cost over speed. Trucking rejection levels are holding steady, indicating a balanced capacity and reduced volumes. If trade tensions are resolved, pent-up demand could ignite a freight surge. Otherwise, potential recession slide looms. So everything's hanging on the balance. What was it a few months ago? The port strike. Everything's hanging on the balance, right? But I know quite a few people that look for opportunity that say if these trade tensions are resolved, it's going to ignite a freight surge. Because think, if they stop imports from coming in for a minute, just like COVID did, and then all of a sudden there's a surge, that's going to be good for the spot market. It'll be rinse and repeat. The next year will be something different. Then the next year after that, it'll be something different. So, I mean, this is just something that you have to, this is what trucking is. Gary says, I drove for Celadon from 2015 to 2017. Settlements were always wrong. Doesn't surprise me. Get under the truck and grease it every week. There you go. Burlington Motor Care was another one that their employees took out, I guess is what you're trying to say. Davis out of Missoula was another scumbag as well, right? Sounds like controlled decline. It probably is, right? Probably is. All right, so enough of that. Let's take a look at the load availability on here. Let's see what the freight's doing right this minute versus what it's been doing and what it might do in the future, right? Shannon just randomly says, I love trucking too much. Checking in from Frankfurt, New York. Sean, what's up? Me too, Shannon. God is in control. He's also given us free will, and people are going to do what they're going to do, right? All right, so let's look at Minnesota. I got to get a truck out of there today. Not a lot of by age, posted age, a lot of stuff for today with no rates posted. That's cool. That's interesting. Not a lot of rates posted. Here we go. East Grand Forks, Minnesota, Chicago. They're at 1,200. Let's take a look at this one. $1.64 a mile, but 2-day run, a day and a half. And we need to get this up to 14 at least. 44.5 on the weight. What's the total cost on this? No tolls. Good deal. That's for today. No, that's for Friday. All right, sort this by highest outbound, highest rate. See what pops up. Florida or West Coast? West Coast, California, Oregon, Virginia. Virginia, it's paying really good to go into Virginia, by the way. Minnesota, Utah, $1.85. 201 to go to Maryland, $2,100. 2-day run. Two-day run to Denver for the same amount, less miles. Atlanta, bucks, 2-day run, a tight 2-day run to Georgia. I probably want a little bit more than that to come out. Let's see, Lions, Kansas. Here we go. Eagan, Minnesota, South Dakota. It's tough to get out. Let's do the highest rate per mile. Let's see what that looks like. See where all the shorties are. $400, Superior. $600 to Iowa. I kind of scroll down until I get into some decent four-digit numbers. See what that looks like. Here we go. Lakeville, Minnesota, Jackson, Tennessee. 2-day run. Here we go. $800. St. Paul to Hodgkin, Illinois. This is the load. So if this was for today, I'd grab this. Picks up at 1 o'clock on Saturday. And if this was a 1-day run, so obviously it's probably going to deliver Monday, right? Yeah, it delivers Monday. So rate per day sucks on this. But it's exhibit materials, probably light. But if this was for today, this would be the one I grab because that puts us in a better market. And it's an $800 day right off the bat. Here we go. Hastings, Minnesota to Dearborn, Michigan. This is for Monday. I need to get a truck up in Michigan. 2 stops. That's why it's paying a little bit better. Well, needs to pay a little bit better. But see, most of the loads going from Minnesota to Michigan are paying about $1.80, $1.90. And they're right just north of $2 a little bit. Yeah, 203 a mile. Why is that? Why? Because they got multiple stops. So if you're a driver that says, I don't do no multiple stops, then you're leaving money on the table. Now, however, if these 2 stops add more miles, that 203 mile gets distorted. So we don't know if that's accurate. Number one. Number two, if it takes an extra day because of the second stop, then now instead of 1,300 for 2 days, we're looking at 1,300 for 3 days. That's no bueno. So you have to take all these things into consideration, right? That's just how it is. Here's another one. See, here's what I was talking about. 1,300 Hastings, Minnesota, Troy, Michigan. That picks up today at 4 p.m. 2 stops, Dearborn and Troy. And it looks like it picks up today, and the final delivery is on Friday. It's kind of late Friday, so we could potentially lose our whole weekend over this $1,300 load. So on the surface, it looks good. But when you add that extra stop and then you're looking at later Friday, that could be a challenge. So before you book this load, you're going to want to see what your outbound looks like if you got to get a truck out of Michigan. And then you're still only looking at six and change a day. And if you need 6 and change a day, that's barely breaking even. So I would want to know who the receiver is. If the receiver's like Target, you don't want this load. If the receiver is like, if that appointment is just a formality and you can get there early because it's only 700 something miles, then you can deliver early and then find an open window appointment that picks up Friday until 5 or something like that. Food and food products. So it could be a grocery warehouse. I can't remember what's in Dearborn. So just kind of keep that in mind. Riding dirty. Good morning, Sean. $1.76 to Des Moines is unheard of out of up here. Going from Illinois to Jackson, it's $1,300 load only weighs 4,500 pounds, so it saves you on fuel, right? And so your net's going to be a little bit better on that load than say something that was 45,000 doing the same run for the same money, right? Some other channels talk a lot about having direct shippers. Can owner op make it with two different trailers running the spot van flat? I don't see why not. Multi stops make me smile. Just finished a one pick 16 drop 940 mile round trip for 369 a mile. Awesome. It takes equipment to have contract direct shippers. Direct shippers. That's something a lot of people don't talk about. Just go out and get your own freight as a one truck operation. Well, a lot of the contracts that I've seen thrown at me have to have, we need 10 trailers on this. And that's where the bigger carriers have an advantage. They can drop 20 trailers in a hat. So, and I'll give you an example. The early years of running spot, I always, for C.H. Robinson, I picked up a lot of Niagara water out of Oklahoma City and went right back up to Missouri. It was an awesome run. Paid decent. And as long as the times worked, it was awesome. And then one day they were just gone. And then finally I scored one. And I got there and there was 12 Schneider trailers dropped in that lot. Huh, that's where they all went. It happens all the time. You're printing money, says Scott. So let's take a look at Virginia. It's paying so well to go into Virginia. Let's see what the outbound of Virginia is doing. Let's sort this by highest rate. $1.03 to California. No. $1.43 to Nebraska. $1.53 to Texas. A couple going to Dallas. Quite a few going to Dallas. Houston. Latham, New York. That's where your money's going to go out of Virginia. It's going to go further northeast. Let's take a look at this one. That's not New York City, so that's good. $26 in tolls, not bad. Estimated fuel at 420. They're at 1,700. Is there multiple stops? First come, first serve, shipper and receiver. So this could be a good one. Now the weight on this, your fuel cost is probably going to be a little bit higher than this. So about $500 in fuel, I would assume. And then you got to look at the outbound market in New York. I got to end this live feed fairly soon. So that's why they're paying so well to go into Virginia, because the rates are a little bit deflated coming out. Now, usually, let's go back to the highest rate per mile. It's either going to be Northeast or Florida. Yep, Pennsylvania for $4.40 a mile. That's $998 for 227 miles. Let's take a look at this one. Noodles. Noodles. What's toll cost on this? No tolls? Man, this is a winner right here, but it puts you in the Pennsylvania market. Just keep that in mind. And you got to go through Washington, D.C. So you might feel icky after that. It's easy. And they put the odd number, right? 998. Make it even 1,000. We'll take it. That's $1,000 day. 23,000 pounds, 227 miles. Let's see. Eight. So my guess is there's probably some oddball time delivery. Virginia to South Carolina, 281 a mile, $825. Not a bad rate per day. 825. $1,000 to go from Winchester to West Coxsackie. What a weird name. New York. See where that is. Middle New York. $19 in tolls. 2 stops. Picks up at 10 p.m. So this is the third shift run here, because the second delivery is at 8 a.m. the next day. So you're going to be running the third shift with this one. So it's a possibility that you're going to lose the day after that. It's not wise to switch shifts like that in the spot market, because eventually you lose a day. Rates are elevated to go into Connecticut because it costs more to travel through Connecticut. So your highest rates right now are actually going northeast more than Florida, which is why Shannon's in Boston, right? All right, let's put this on reefer. And let's take a look at let's take a look at Missouri outbound and refrigerated. Carthage to Olathe, 725 for 150 miles. 750 go to Kentucky. Let's do highest rate. See where all the long haul reefer freight's going. 4,500 to go from to Canada. We don't want to do that. Carthage to Rocky Hill, Connecticut, 257 mile, $3,400. 2,700 to go to Utah. Vermont, here we go. St. Louis to Miami, 226 mile. So that goes back to what I was saying. Northeast and then Florida are the highest rates. Webb City to Orlando. These are all above $1,000 a day. Here's Webb City to Saxonburg, PA. 2,300. It's been as high as 28. No toll cost on this one. $1.27 to go to California. $2.30 to go to Houston from St. Joseph, Missouri. So not bad rates coming out of here. All right, let's put in our flatbed and step deck. Volumes look fairly decent too. Yeah, it's the same story. I don't even know why I even bother with this one. But I got to be fair to you flatbedders. Southeast, maybe Illinois, Indiana, if you in Maryland. Let's go back to Van for a second. All right. Missouri's got 279 outbound. Ohio's got 453 outbound. 431 outbound in Illinois or Indiana, and then 455 in Illinois. Wisconsin's got 208 outbound. Let's see. Georgia's got 697 outbound. So if we go to, let's go to DAT real quick. Oh, man. It's not going to let me log in. Calling dealer soon. I'm afraid of the answer. Sterling, the truck did move. It was moving early this morning, so they did something with it. But anyways, we're going to get off here. That way I can tend to my real job. But anyways, thanks for watching. I appreciate your guys' support in this lack of consistency that I call my YouTube channel. I'm trying to do more, but other things have to take precedence. There's a lot going on personally, so we're just dealing with it. So, anywho, strength for today, hope for tomorrow. Aggression turns to screws. Keep your head on a swivel, and be prepared for anything. Anything.